Students, I welcome you all for my today's class. So today we are going to discuss on the treatment aspect of female infertility. So for the convenience, the treatment modalities in the female infertility are grouped as follows according to the disorders identified. So we have already covered about the causes of female infertility. We know there are different causes: ovulatory causes, tubal causes, then associated disorders like endometriosis, infections or endocrinopathy, cervical factors, immunological, unexplained infertility, uterovaginal canal problems, and there are different methods like ART, etc. So all these I will study in detail today. And first about the ovulatory dysfunction. As we have studied, there are three main ovulatory dysfunction. One is the anovulation, second one is the LPD, luteinized luteal phase defect, and LUF, that is the luteinized unruptured follicle. So coming to first the anovulation. Anovulation is a common factor for female infertility. It may be present in otherwise normal menstrual cycle or may be associated with the oligomenorrhea or amenorrhea. So coming to the induction of ovulation, if the cycles are anovulatory, that means ovulation is not occurring properly, by we can know this by the taking a proper history, general menstrual history of a patient. If she is having amenorrhea or oligomenorrhea, it indicates that the cycles are anovulatory. Okay, so how to, in such cases we have to go for the induction of ovulation. So what is induction of ovulation and how we can do the induction of ovulation? So there are three measures for the induction of ovulation. One is the general measures, second is with the help of drugs or medicines, third with the help of surgery. So first, coming to the general methods, first is the general methods. So what are the general methods? General methods is nothing but the psychotherapy to improve the emotional causes, if any. So you have to console the patient correctly. The second is with the help of reduction of the weight in the obesity, as in PCOS cases. If the patient is obese, you can ask patient to reduce her weight, and reduction of the weight is essential to have a good response of the drug therapy for induction, and this facilitates spontaneous ovulation. So with, suppose if the patient is obese, only by the help of reduce weight reduction, there will be chances of spontaneous ovulation can occur by itself. Okay, so the next third is with the help of drugs. So now let us see what are the drugs which we can use singly or in combination. The following drugs are used. See, the drugs are, first is the CC, is the very commonest drug. It is called as clomiphene citrate, CC, or the clomiphene citrate. Second is the letrozole, HMG, FSH, that is different variations of FSH, SCG, profesipregnol, recombinant SCG, GnRH analogs can be used for the stimulation of ovulation. Second, with the help of correction of the biochemical abnormalities, if any, like if the patient is having hyperinsulinemia or insulin resistance, then in such cases we can give the insulin sensitizers like metformin, etc. Androgen axis is there, then we can start the dexamethasone. If prolactin raise is there, then we can go for the bromocriptine. And substitution therapy, if she is suffering from any endocrinopathies like hypothyroidism, then we can treat that condition properly with the help of thyroid medicines like thyroxine, etc. If diabetes mellitus is there, then we can give the anti-diabetic drugs. So these are the drugs used in the induction of ovulation. One by one we'll study. First, before that, we should know the objectives of monitoring for the induction of ovulation. What are the objectives? So the objectives are to select time for pre-ovulatory administration of SCG, to prevent ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, to detect the time for intercourse or the artificial insemination, to select time for ovum retrieval in IVF. So these are the different objectives of the monitoring of the induction of labor. So how we can monitor during the ovulation induction? See, during the ovulation induction we should monitor it, how whether the ovulation is occurring or not. So there are different ways. We have already studied how to diagnose the ovulation, so those methods we can use here also, like BBT, basal body temperature. Basal body temperature recording is enough. With some therapies, diagnosis of ovulation is obtained from BBT chart supplemented by the cervical mucus study. But when a complicated regimen is followed to achieve pregnancy by time intercourse or by ART, a detailed monitoring is a must. which is only possible in selected centers. Not only the drugs are costly, the regimens are complicated and time consuming. So apart from the BBT and cervical mucus study, which are non-invasive, simple and quite informative, other parameters can also be used, like the serum estimation of the hormones like plasma E2. E2 is the estrogen, and or we can also take the help of the ultrasonography, that is ultrasonic measurement of the growing follicle or folliculometry. These last two are the obligatory in the ART, artificial reproductive techniques. So coming to the first drug which we use for induction of labor, it is called as CC or the clomiphene citrate. So what are the patient selection or the criteria for giving the CC is normogonadotrophic, normoprolactinemic patients, normogonadotrophic and normoprolactinemic patients which are having the normal cycles with the absent or infrequent ovulation. So these are the first criteria. Second is like these type of patients we can select for giving CC. Then PCOS cases also we can start CC. PCOS cases with oligomenorrhea and amenorrhea, because in the PCOS cases what happens, there is anovulation or oligoovulation will be there, so you can start CC in PCOS cases also. The estrogen level should be raised to 40 pg per ml in such cases. Then third indication is hypothalamic amenorrhea following stress or the pill use. So if patient is under constant stress, then she may develop hypothalamic amenorrhea. In such cases also you can start CC, which gives good results, or with the if pill use amenorrhea is there, then also we can start with the CC. So coming to its dosage and how to give the clomiphene citrate. Clomiphene therapy is simple, safe, and at the same time it is cost effective. Most centers use an initial dose of 50 mg daily. So we can start with the 50 mg daily dose, OD dose is there, and dose can be increased in the 50 mg steps to a maximum of 250 mg daily. So slowly we can increase our maximum to 250 mg daily. You should not exceed to more than 250 mg daily if ovulation is not induced by the lower dose. So always we should start any medicine with the lower dose. So here also we can start clomiphene with the 50 mg daily OD dose, and we can increase it depending if suppose ovulation is not occurring. So next month we can make it 100 mg, and next month we can make it as 250 mg. So like that we can increase 200 250 mg like that. So actual starting phase of its administration in the follicular phase varies between day 2 and day 5. So how to give is starting in the administration should be given in the follicular phase, either between the day 2 and the day 5 of a cycle of a female, day 2 and day 5, and therapy is given for the 5 days only. Every month you have to give for the 5 days only. Ovulation is expected to occur about 5 to 7 days after the last day of the therapy. So after the last day of the therapy, after the 5 to 7 days of the last day of the therapy, like 1 week after, there are chances of ovulation. Therapy for the 6 cycles is generally given. So till how long we can give this clomiphene citrate regimen is up to the 6 months. Maximum we can give it for the 6 months. So this is the method. We should start from the 50 mg, can be maximum we can give to 250 mg OD dose. And how to give is, it should be starts in the follicular phase, that is in between day 2 and day 5 of the cycle, and this should be given for only 5 days every month, and this can be continued for the 6 cycles. Okay, so this is a dosage and method of giving clomiphene citrate. Then mechanism of the action of clomiphene. Clomiphene is anti-estrogenic as well as weakly estrogenic. It blocks the estrogen receptors in the hypothalamus. This results in increased GnRH pulsatile amplitude, causing increased gonadotrophin secretions from the pituitary. Anti-estrogenic effects are seen on the endometrium and on the cervical mucus. So coming to side effects, what are the side effects of CC? Hot flashes, nausea, vomitings, headaches, visual disturbances, or ovarian hyperstimulation. Incidence of abortion and the congenital fetal malformations are not increased. Then couple instruction during this course. The couple is advised to have sexual intercourse as per following guidelines: daily or on alternate days beginning from 5 to 7 days after the last dose of clomiphene therapy, several times for 24 to 48 hours after the color change in the urine when tested by the LH kit. So LH kit is an indication of the LH search. It's a simple method we can do. So the number of times over 24 to 36 hours following SCG administration. So these are the instructions should be given for the couple regarding the sexual intercourse. The results, what are the results of CC? Successful induction rate is high as 80%. So 80% chances of success are there with the clomiphene if we select the patient properly. But cumulative pregnancy rate is about 70% over 6 to 9 cycles. The discrepancy is due to the premature luteinization, LPD, cervical mucus hostility, and other non-ovulatory factors. The incidence of multiple pregnancy is about 7% too. Next is the adjuvant therapy. Despite the high success rate of clomiphene, some adjuvant therapy is often needed. Adjuvant therapy means along with the clomiphene we can add other medicines also, so together they can give the good results. So that is called as the adjuvant therapy. So what are adjuvant therapy? So it depends on the patient. Suppose a patient is hyperinsulinemic, and then in such cases like PCOS patient is there, so there are chances of hyperinsulinemia. So in that case we can start the insulin sensitizers. So patients with PCOS with BMI more than 25 are often found insulin resistance. Obese women with PCOS often suffer from impaired glucose tolerance or type 2 diabetes. Correction of their metabolic abnormalities along with the weight reduction gives satisfactory results. So in this case, suppose PCOS case is there, if you are starting CC clomiphene citrate, then you can also add along with that any insulin sensitizers like metformin. So treatment with metformin is found to reduce hyperinsulinemia and hyperandrogenemia. Combination treatment with metformin and a clomiphene increases the ovulation rate significantly. So if PCOS case is there, so you can together start CC along with that metformin or any insulin sensitizer can be added. The next case, pre-existing or induced elevated androgens are there. If androgens are raised in the woman, then you can suppress the androgens by giving the dexamethasone 0.5 mg daily for 10 days starting from the day 1 of the cycle. The drug should be stopped soon after ovulation. Should not be continued after ovulation because it is anti-androgenic. So in the luteal phase it should not be continued. Only the follicular phase starting from the first day of the cycle 0.5 mg dexa you can be given for 10 days in cases of elevated androgens. Elevated androgens can also occur in the PCOS cases or even in the adrenal tumor cases, etc. Third, L-troxin. Yes, L-troxin 0.1 mg may be administered daily during the therapy in the obese patients with subclinical hypothyroidism. If you find that patient is having subclinical hypothyroidism, then you can give the L-troxin in a minimum dose of 0.1 mg. If already thyroid problem is there, then you can start the thyroxine in the dose required for the patient. Then if elevated prolactin levels are there, elevated prolactin levels with or without galactorrhea indicates abnormal GnRH pulse secretion. This causes ovulatory dysfunction, LPD or amenorrhea. So in that case, for elevated prolactin level, you can start the bromocriptine or cabergoline dopamine agonist therapy, which increases the ovarian responsiveness to the clomiphene. So along with the clomiphene, you can start the bromocriptine or cabergoline therapy also in cases of hyperprolactinemia or when the prolactin levels are high. Patients with the normal or minimally elevated prolactin when treated with the bromocriptine or clomiphene are found to have increased pregnancy rates. Dopamine agonist treatment normalizes the prolactin levels 80%, restores cyclic menses 80%, and ovulation in majority 70% of women. Side effects: nausea, dizziness, vomitings, and arthroscapic hypertension are seen. The side effects of cabergoline are less, especially when it is used by the vaginal route. And then HCG in cases of anovulation due to failure of LH surge, HCG 5000 IU is administered usually 7 days after the last dose of clomiphene therapy. That means when the LH surge is needed, at that time we can give the injection HCG 5000 international units if we are suspecting the failure of LH surge. In such patients, prior monitoring of the serum estradiol level and ultrasonic measurement of the follicular diameter, which should be around 18 to 20 mm, is preferred to get a good results. So this can be given in cases of failure of LSR, HCG 5000 IU, and when it is to be given is after the 7 days of the last dose of clomiphene citrate. Growth hormone is combined to the poor responders, especially in the elderly group. growth hormone can also be added. And because of the anti-estrogenic effect of clomiphene citrate, the cervical mucus becomes thick and viscid, and it hinders sperm penetration. So in such cases, you can also add conjugated estrogen 1.25 mg given daily for 10 days starting on the first day of cycle, may be helpful. So as we know, the clomiphene citrate is having the anti-estrogenic effect, so it can make the cervical mucus thick. So again, there will be problem with the cervical factor. If the mucus becomes thick, then there will be the problem with the sperm penetration. So to reduce that, we can add conjugated estrogen orally in the minimum dose of 1.25 mg daily for the 10 days from the starting from the first day 1 to day 10 of the cycle of a woman. So this is all about the clomiphene citrate. Even we can also use the aromatase inhibitors like letrozole can also be given in the similar cases. Indications are same. If clomiphene citrate fails, then we can also start the aromatase inhibitors letrozole, especially in the PCOS cases, with a starting dose of 2.5 mg. Same, it should be given from the day 2 to day 5 of the cycle, and it should also be continued for 3 to 6 cycles, depending on the condition of the patient, whether ovulation is occurring or not. You have to monitor accordingly. The next about the gonadotrophins. Gonadotrophins can also be given. So prerequisite for gonadotrophin therapy is ovarian reserve must be present. Ovarian reserve means there should be follicles present in the ovaries. Okay, so decline in the fertility status due to oocyte depletion is known as the decreased ovarian reserve. Age of a woman is the strongest determinant of the ovarian reserve. Value of the serum FSH more than 10 international units per liter measures on the day 3 is suggestive of poor ovarian reserve. So how to know this ovarian reserve? Ovarian reserve can be known by scanning, or there is one more method. You have to measure the serum FSH level on the day 3rd. If it is more than 10 IU per L liter, it suggests that there is poor, because FSH should not be more. If follicle stimulating hormone is increasing, that means follicles are not responding or follicles are not there. That's why FSH level increases. So if it is more than 10 on the day 3rd, it indicates the poor ovarian reserve. Other non-ovulatory factors for infertility must be ruled out. HMG or human menopausal gonadotrophins therapy is a mixture of FSH and LH. FSH 75 IU and LH 75 IU. The combination HMG can also be given. So coming to the indications of gonadotrophin therapy. First is indication is hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism. Second indication is clomiphene failed or resistant cases. Third is unexplained infertility, and fourth one is subfertile women who are elderly. So these are the indications of the gonadotrophin use. Then dose schedule. HMG stimulates follicular growth with a variable dose schedule starting with a low dose of 75 IU IM, that is intramuscular per day. Stimulation is started at any time from the day 2 to day 5 of the cycle, and it is to be continued for the 7 to 10 days depending on the response. Follicular growth is measured with the help of serum estradiol estimation, as well as with the follicular number and size measured through the help of transvaginal sonography TVS scan. Serum estradiol level of 500 to 1500 pg per ml and maximum follicular diameter of 18 to 20 mm are optimum. Endometrial thickness, which is measured again with the TVS scan, should be more than or equal to 8 to 9 mm, is considered as optimum. And when these optimum levels are obtained, then you have to give the injection SCG in a 5000 to 10,000 international unit is administered IM to induce the ovulation. Then endometrium thickness of 8 to 10 mm as measured by the TVS on the day of SCG administration favors the successful implantation. Ovulation is expected to occur approximately 36 hours after the SCG administration. So gonadotrophin regimens may be step up or the step down depending upon the response of the woman to the exogenous gonadotrophins. And then couple instructions. It is advised for the timing of couple is to be advised for the timings of the intercourse and or the artificial insemination techniques if we are going through. Then patient with the PCOS are more sensitive to HMG stimulation. Purified FSH and highly purified FSH or recombinant FSH have been used successfully with the minimum side effects. In cases of hypergonadotrophic hypogonadism, high gonadotrophin levels are lowered with the use of the combined estrogen progesterone preparations, that is with the help of giving oral contraceptive pills. Use of long acting GnRH agonist also suppresses the high androgynous gonadotrophin levels. When the level reaches normal, gonadotrophin therapy should be employed to achieve ovulation, and the success rate is poor in cases of hypergonadotrophic hypogonadism cases. Coming to the side effects of the gonadotrophin therapy, contraindications of the gonadotrophin includes primary ovarian failure with the raised serum FSH, and uncontrolled thyroid adrenal dysfunction, sex hormone dependent tumor in the body, pituitary tumor, ovarian cyst, etc. Result: pregnancy rate after 6 courses of treatment is 90%. Incidence of multiple pregnancy is also 10 to 30%. Overall incidence of miscarriages is 20 to 25%, and ectopic pregnancy risk are also high. Risk of congenital anomalies are not increased. GnRH, exogenous GnRH, pulsatile GnRH treatment stimulates the psychological levels of pituitary gonadotrophin secretions. So development of the follicular growth, selection, recruitment, and the ovulation as in the normal menstrual cycle occurs. Then patient selection: when ovulatory dysfunction is due to hypothalamic amenorrhea, hypogonadotrophic hypogonadism, women with hyperprolactinemia, then GnRH is administered intravenously, IV, or even subcutaneously with the help of an infusion pump in a pulsatile fashion, because GnRH is released in a pulsatile fashion only. So here, with the help of infusion pump, we can give the GnRH in the same pulsatile fashion. A pulse of 5 microgram is used IV at every 90 minutes. Interval is 90 minutes. Every 90 minutes, one pulse of 5 mg of the GnRH can be administered through intravenous route. Follicular growth is similar to a normal menstrual cycle. Follicular growth monitoring, SCG administration, and couple instructions are same as in the HMG therapy. Same things you have to follow. The result of this is 80% chances of pregnancy following the 6 courses of treatment with the help of this exogenous GnRH. Multiple pregnancy rate is 5%, overall miscarriage is 30%, and the risk of ovarian stimulation is also low. So next, about GnRH analogs. Patient selection is patient refractory to gonadotrophins. That means patients who are not responding to the gonadotrophins, patients having the elevated LH, patients with a normal gonadotrophins, patients with premature follicular luteinization or premature ovulation due to premature LH surge. GnRH agonist like buzarelin and neferelin is given subcutaneously or intranasally, either maintaining a short or a long protocol. GnRH agonist is used for downregulation of pituitary gland by desensitization of pituitary GnRH receptors. GnRH agonists initially produce stimulation of the gonadotrophin secretions known as a flare effect. Generally, this flare effect lasts for about 2 to 3 weeks. Adequate pituitary suppression is achieved when the serum estradiol level is less than 10 pg per ml and the FSH level is less than 10 international units per ml. Follicular stimulation is achieved with the highly purified or recombinant FSH. Follicular number and the growth monitoring is similar as in the HMG therapy. SCG is also administered when the criteria is fulfilled as discussed with the HMG therapy. So results: ovulation rate is about 75% and pregnancy rate is about 25%. Next is about GnRH antagonist. It can block the pituitary GnRH receptors completely without any initial stimulation. So cetrorelix is currently being tried to prevent premature LH surge. As with GnRH analog, gonadotrophin stimulation is done. So when pregnancy occurs following superovulation with GnRH agonist therapy, luteal phase support should be maintained by giving the SCG or by giving the progesterone. It should be emphasized that the gonadotrophin, GnRH and GnRH analogs are costly drugs, so their users have to be monitored carefully with a sophisticated gadgets, so it should not be control the regimen. So it is those are available in the artificial reproductive techniques centers, ART centers. Next, about the LPD or luteal phase defect. How to treat the LPD condition? Treatment: the following treatment may be of help in the idiopathic groups. First, we can give the because in the luteal phase defect, what happens? The corpus luteum is not properly produced and progesterone level is less. So here we can give the natural progesterone. Progesterone supplement should be given as in the form of vaginal suppositories, 100 mg thrice daily, starting from the day of ovulation is effective. It should be continued until the menses begins. If menses fails to appear after 14 days, then pregnancy test is to be done. If the test is positive, it should be continued up to the 10th week of the pregnancy. One, progesterone we can gain. Second is the SCG. SCG is also a potent leukotropic hormone. However, the response of LPD to SCG is unpredictable. Third is in unresponsive cases, clomiphene citrate may be tried. It increases FSH, which may improve the folliculogenesis and the normal corpus luteum formation with adequate production of progesterone. In refractory cases, IVF may be tried. Next point is LUF or luteinized unruptured follicle. Here, the defective folliculogenesis or inadequate LS surge may be correlated with optimally timed intramuscular injection of SCG 5000 to 10,000 IU, administration of ovulation inducing drugs in the follicular phase followed by ovulatory SCG 5000 to 10,000 international units. Bromocriptine therapy if associated with the hyperprolactinemia can be given in cases of luteinized unruptured follicle, where the follicle is trapped inside the Graafian follicle and it is not ruptured. Okay, so in those cases you can try with all these treatment, SHG and bromocriptine. Next method is last method for the ovulation, induction of ovulation, is the surgery. So which surgery we can try in cases to induce the ovulation is, first one is the laparoscopic ovarian drilling. It is called as LOD or the laser vaporization. So ovarian drilling, when it is to be done, it is to be done by the multiple punctured 4 to 6 sites of the cyst present in the polycystic syndrome. So this ovarian drilling is indicated in the PCOS condition. It can be done with the help of diathermy or with the help of laser. We have to rupture the, or you can say we have to puncture the cyst. It reduces the systemic or intra-ovarian androgen levels. This procedure is helpful in the clomiphene resistant hyperandrogenic anovulatory women. The woman ovulates spontaneously following the LOD or the laparoscopic ovarian drilling. Next surgery is wedge resection. This is not commonly done these days. Bilateral wedge resection of the ovaries is done in the PCOS as cases where clomiphene citrate fails to induce ovulation, but it produces the adhesions. Surgery for the pituitary prolactinomas. If there is any tumor in the pituitary, then with the help of surgery, those tumors has to be removed. The surgical removal of the virilization or other functioning ovarian or adrenal tumor. If there is any presence of ovarian tumor and adrenal tumor, then that is to be done, excision is to be done, or that tumor is to be removed. Uterovaginal surgery is to correct if there is any block or pathology present. Bariatric surgery in cases of the obese patient. If patients are too obese, then you can go for the bariatric surgeries also. Next, coming to the treatment of tubal and peritoneal factors. Tubal factors for infertility are corrected only with the help of surgery, because tubal adhesions and blocks are there, so you need surgery. So different surgical methods are there. First is for the pre-tubal adhesions, correction is done by the salpingio-ovariolysis, either by the laparoscopy or by the laparotomy. Second, for the proximal tubal block, salpingography under the fluoroscopy may be helpful to remove any block due to the mucus plugging. We can go for the salpingography. Otherwise, proximal tubal cannulation with a guide wire under the hysteroscopic guidance is done. In about 85% cases, tubal patency may be restored, or overall pregnancy rate of about 45 to 60% is reported. Cannulation or the balloon tuboplasty can avoid the need of ART, which is expensive. So cannulization or the balloon tuboplasty can be done in the proximal tubal blocks. For the distal tubal block, you can go for fimbrioplasty or fimbriolysis or neo-salpingostomy. Fimbrioplasty or fimbriolysis, release of the fimbrial adhesions and or dilatation of the fimbrial phimosis. Neo-salpingostomy to create a new tubal opening in an occluded tube. For the mid-tubal blocks, reversal of the tubal ligation. Pregnancy rates after this procedure varies between 50 to 82%. Success rate depends on the age, the method of sterilization, polymerase, fallope rings, diathermy, etc. Site of anastomosis, ischemic or ischemic to cornual. This type of anastomosis should be done. Tubo anastomosis means you have to connect, after removing the block you have to connect both the tubes, so that is a tubo anastomosis. Final length of the restored tube. Risk of ectopic pregnancy following tubal anastomosis is 3 to 7%. See in the diagram you can see the tubo anastomosis. Placement of 4 to 5 interrupted sutures using 80 polygalactine sutures. Next, guidelines for the tubal surgery. Tubal surgery may be considered in the young woman after previous tubal sterilization, or in women with a mild disease at the distal tubal segment. Tubal surgery may be tried for the mild proximal tubal block. Preoperative assessment and the planning for the surgery has to be done by HSG, that is a hysterosalpingiography or laparoscopy, and if possible by falloposcopy to assess the tubal mucosa. Prior counseling of the patient about the hazards of the surgery and the prospect of the future pregnancy should be done. In tubercular salpingitis, that is inflammation of the salpinge after the tuberculosis, that is called as tubercular salpingitis. Surgery is to be withheld following anti-tubercular therapy. First in them we have to start with the anti-tubercular therapy, then we can go for the IVF. ET may be employed when the endometrium becomes free from lesions. IVF is considered as the best treatment option for any complicated tubal occlusive diseases. So rather than going for the surgery, it's better to go for the IVF in such cases. Salpingectomy should be done before IVF when hydrosalpinges are present. If there are hydrosalpinges, then you can go for the salpingectomies. Methods of tubal surgery. Tuboplasty. Tuboplasty is the name given to the fine surgery on the tubes to restore the anatomy and physiology as far as practicable. The operation can be done by conventional methods or by microsurgical techniques, which may be employed following laparotomy or by laparoscopy. Microsurgical techniques gives better results due to the minimal tissue handling damage, perfect hemostasis, minimum adhesion formation. Laparoscopic surgery gives the best result. Nylon may be used as a temporary splint or to facilitate suturing the ends. It should be removed following anastomosis, or if kept inside should be removed after 48 hours to minimize mucosal damage. Intraoperative instillation of the Ringer's lactate RL solution mixed with the heparin or hydrocortisone should be employed to minimize adhesion formation. Adjuvant therapy. Adjuvant procedures to improve the result of tubal surgery includes the prophylactic antibiotics. Simultaneously, we can give the prophylactic antibiotics and the use of adhesion prevention devices, because there are chances of adhesions after this surgery. So we can use certain devices like Interseed or Sapra film. You can be introduced after doing the surgery so that it prevents the adhesions. And post-operative hydrotubation. Hydrotubation with this RL added with the heparin or hydrocortisone. Then hydrotubation. Hydrotubation is a procedure to flush the tube lumen by medicated fluid passed transcervically through a canal. The fluid contains antibiotic and hydrocortisone, gentamicin 80 mg and dexamethasone 4 mg in 10 ml of distilled water. It should be done in the post-menstrual phase. After the completion of menstruation, you can go for the hydrotubation. Results of tuboplasty. The result depends upon the nature of pathology, type of surgery and techniques employed, macro or microsurgery. Overall, the pregnancy rate following the surgeries like ovariolysis is 65%, fimbrioplasty is 32%, tubo-anastomosis is 75%, tubocornual anastomosis is 55%. The result is better in the microsurgical techniques when done laparoscopically. The result is best in the reversal tubal sterilization by tubal anastomosis using the microsurgical techniques. So next is the tuboplasty operation. Here is a table chart. You can go through it. Adhesiolysis, salpingo-ovariolysis is a separation or division of adhesions. Fimbrioplasty is a separation of the fimbrial adhesion to open up the abdominal ostia. Salpingostomy, this creates a new opening in a completely occluded tube. It is called the terminal or the cuff at the abdominal ostium. The eversion of the neo-ostium is maintained by few stitches of 6-0 Vicryl. Tubo-anastomosis, when the segment of the diseased tube following tubectomy operation is resected and end-to-end anastomosis is done. Tubocornual anastomosis, when there is cornual block, the remaining healthy tube is anastomosed to the patent interstitial part of the tube. So this completes the tuboplasty surgeries. Thank you.